And we're live on a Monday Night Raw edition of the live stream here. Post show reaction to Monday Night Raw. And a real early Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone joining us in the live stream. I see we already have some activity in the live stream already. What's going on, Sylvia, Alex, Sanfran5, and Luis? Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone joining us tonight on the live stream. As you can see, got my Santa hat on, preparing for Christmas, which is only a couple of days away, depending where you are, whether you're on the East Coast or West Coast, depending where you are. It might just be Christmas Eve already. But the fact is, a Monday Night Raw, a taped Monday Night Raw at that, obviously, with a lot of, things to talk about here coming out of Raw. Like I said, it was a taped show. So when it comes to these tape shows, it's not really like a big eventful thing, but enough to keep us satisfied and heading in to the holiday season, or really heading out all the holiday season if you think about it. Christmas is only 2 days away tomorrow if you are on the East Coast, and what a treat it was to start off the night. What did you guys think of the opening between Sami Zayn and Drew McIntyre? I could watch those two go at it all night. I mean, the promo that Sami delivered in front of Drew McIntyre, talking about how he points the fingers at everybody, how Drew McIntyre never really takes accountability for his own actions and rather point the finger at everybody, saying that he has his own problems to deal with. And Sami Zayn delivering this impassioned promo, connecting with a lot of people in the audience as well as people at home. And it's one thing I love and appreciate about a guy like Sami Zayn. He certainly is one of those characters, and rather one of those performers who can connect with you on all basis. I mean, in the ring, on the microphone, Sami Zayn for sure really got me riled up when it came up with that promo. He's one of the very reasons why I think he's a perennial babyface. He should never turn heel. He had a short stint, as the master conspirator during like the pandemic, obviously his time with the Bloodline. But Sami Zayn, if you're familiar with the podcast and if you're familiar with the channel, you would know that I think highly of him. I actually make the comparison with Mick Foley when it comes to Sami Zayn, just because he's always had that ability to connect with the crowd on a genuine level. Of course, they had the main event, Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre, a matchup that we recently saw at Saturday night's main event. And if you saw Saturday night's main event, you saw that Drew McIntyre got the win. And if you watched tonight's Monday Night Raw, you would have thought it was a rerun. You would have thought that we had went back in the time machine and went back December 14th to that very night, because Drew McIntyre again gets a victory over Sami Zayn. He just can't get over Drew McIntyre. Merry Christmas. Shout out to Nacho Camacho in the chat. Thanks for joining the live stream tonight. Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre have a great matchup, obviously per the course. Two professionals when it comes to WWE. Drew McIntyre gets the win. Sami Zayn takes the loss. But what happens after, obviously, the Bloodline beatdown, Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, and the Samoan Werewolf, Jacob Fatu, make their appearance known. They attack Sami Zayn, they attack Jey Uso, and they stand tall at the conclusion of Monday Night Raw. More questions than answers, right? What are we going to do next when it comes to this point of the storyline? We've already had War Games, so we're really just building up to the first Raw on Netflix. Tribal Combat, Roman Reigns, and Solo Sikoa to determine who will be the definitive, undisputed, undeniable Tribal Chief. I want to hear from you guys, members of the J area. Go and let your voices be known. What are you guys thinking about this first episode of Monday Night Raw on Netflix? A lot to look forward to. We're gonna get ahead and we're gonna throw a poll in the chat here, because I want to hear, what are we most anticipated for when it comes to the first episode of Raw on Netflix? They're really pushing it as like a PLE event, really. I mean, when you look at the way they've been building it up, many matches that are caliber for a PLE. As they should, right? Trying to pull out there. Throwing it out there. I want to hear from you guys. What are you most looking forward to when it comes to debut on Netflix for Monday Night Raw? Sanford 5 says, it felt like a filler to be honest, but still a good show. I agree. When it comes to these taped shows, it really feels like they're filler. We're just filling in between episodes, between live takes. Last week on Friday Night SmackDown, I will say that for sure was a filler episode. I love DIY. Love what we saw in the triple threat match. But really, for the purpose of that show, it didn't feel like consequential. It didn't feel like big stories were there. There was no Kevin Owens live. There was no live Cody Rhodes. No live Roman Reigns. The big players were missing on that last episode of SmackDown. This one right here, again, you kind of got the feel that it was filler, but at least we got to see guys like Damian Priest. Finn Balor was also involved. Io Sky with a huge win in the triple threat match to advance in the tournament for the Intercontinental Championship for the women's division. Drew versus Sami, an appearance by the Bloodline. Although it may have felt like a filler show, I definitely think it was a step in the right direction. It was better than the SmackDown episode, I will say, in terms of level of excitement. We got some advancement in storylines. Chad Gable had defeated Akira Tozawa. We're finally going to see Chad Gable versus Otis one-on-one, a feud that has been running on and off since the summer, and we finally get to see a matchup between the two. Hopefully, Otis can finally avenge the torment that he suffered from Chad Gable over the course of the summer, and we finally get a feel-good moment for the Alpha Academy. We saw Dexter Lumis versus The Miz, continuing the feud between the Final Testament and the Wyatt Six, and back-to-back DQ finishes, which I'm never a fan of unless if it's with a purpose. I look at the matchup between Dominic and Damian. That one was par for the course. We already saw these two do battle several times, so I get why they went DQ finish there. But to have Dexter Lumis versus The Miz finish at a DQ the next match, I thought that was quite the choice. I thought it was quite bold. If you're going to do two DQ finishes on one show, you might want to separate them out. Separate them, make them feel spaced out so it's not as, clunky, if you will. Aside from that, I really enjoyed the triple threat match between Io Sky. Natalya was also there. Alba Fire. That was fun. We saw that Kairi Sane was taken out by the PFC, so it opens up an opportunity for someone to fill in for her spot. Of course, Sonya Deville is politicking her way to try to get that position, and Adam Pearce shuts it down real quick. He says, why am I going to reward you for attacking Kairi, putting us in this mess? Why am I going to reward you for that? He said, rather, why don't we give it to Io Sky? And Io Sky, again, if you are familiar with the content here, you know I'm a big fan of Io. Loved her since her time in NXT, her progression to the main roster as one of the main stars in the women's division and one of the top stars just in the company. Io is a champion whether she has a title or not. Can she be the inaugural IC champion? I think so. I mean, at the beginning of this tournament, I didn't predict her to be because she wasn't in the tournament. I was thinking about people like a Dakota Kai, maybe a Lyra Valkyria, even Natalya had crossed my mind. I had settled in on Lyra Valkyria. I still think that's a solid pick, but with Io Sky, her performance in the world title match at the Saturday night's main event, and the level of momentum that she's been building up since, you can make the argument that it could be her in the finals rather than Lyra Valkyria. But whoever wins on that side of the bracket between Lyra and Io, that's going to be your champion. I would be very surprised if we saw Dakota Kai win the title. I'm a fan of Dakota, but when you have the other individuals like Lyra and Io, I don't see her winning. I would be shocked. I would be all out shocked if Zoe Stark won this tournament when you have the stars caliber of Lyra and Io and a fan favorite in Dakota Kai. We already have many heel champions on the roster. Think about that. When you look at heel champions, Gunther, heel champion. Nia Jax, Liv Morgan, heel champions. Braun Breaker, kind of a tweener. Chelsea Green, a heel. We just had a recently tag team champions DIY turned heel. I don't think we're going to go heel. I think we're going to go babyface. So I do think that Io Sky, Lyra Valkyria, one of those will be the inaugural IC champion. Should be a great match. Both semifinals going to take place next week with, of course, Lyra and Io taking on each other, and Dakota Kai facing off against Zoe Stark, avenging the attack from the PFC onto Kairi Sane. And now saying that out loud and keeping our Booker hat on rather than our Santa Claus hat on, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Zoe Stark defeat Dakota Kai. We see Io Sky defeat Lyra Valkyria, even though she was my pick to win the tournament. And in the finals, book it right here. In the finals, it'll probably end up being Zoe Stark versus Io as the ultimate, revenge and being able to avenge the loss suffered by Dakota Kai, the injury sustained by Kairi Sane. I'm telling you right now, on the very first episode of Monday Night Raw on Netflix, January 6th, it will be for the Intercontinental Championship, Io Sky versus Zoe Stark. And Io Sky will emerge victorious, holding that beautiful championship up, and will be able to call herself the first ever Women's IC Champion. That's not a prediction. That's a spoiler, as Paul Heyman would say. But of course, other news on Monday Night Raw, we had Seth Rollins, who had an interview with Jackie Redmond. Love Jackie Redmond, by the way. Great interviewer. Great interview with Seth Rollins. And really just hyping up the matchup between he and CM Punk, a decade in the making. We've seen the beef online. We've seen the beef on TV. A lot of similarities between the two if you haven't seen online. A lot of people have been discussing the parallels between a CM Punk and a Seth Rollins. Both internet darlings. Both former Ring of Honor champions. Having kind of the ability to beat to their own drum. Developing their own following. Both weren't really handpicked by the system. Even though Seth Rollins eventually was kind of handpicked by the system because of the authority. Money in the Bank winners. Cash in their briefcase to win World Championship gold. Two of the more egomaniacal characters when you look at CM Punk and the Straight Edge Society. And then there was Seth Rollins as the Messiah, the Monday Night Messiah. Who remembers that back during the pandemic? Kind of paralleling between one another. And now they've been on a collision course ever since CM Punk returned at the Survivor Series in Chicago during last year's War Games. They've been on collision course here. And I'm thinking it's going to be a great match. I mean, that wouldn't be too far-fetched to believe, right? Some of the greatest matches in WWE history have been between two individuals who are not only like-minded in their presentation and their athleticism, but also have a sense of real heat between them. Now, of course, between Rollins and Punk, they're professionals. It's all about good business. So I'm willing to trust that they're going to put their differences aside just to make sure that they're able to put on a caliber matchup worthy of the debut episode of Netflix Raw. Now, if you ask me who wins the matchup, I could see it going one of two ways. Right? Hear me out. Again, keeping the Booker hat on. Whoever wins this matchup, I think, gets a world title match against Gunther. I'm thinking the Royal Rumble, right? Seems like a fitting opportunity to have that championship. It's arguably number 2 or number 3 in terms of the biggest show of the year. Obviously, WrestleMania is number 1. And then number 2 could either be SummerSlam or Royal Rumble, depending who you ask. Whoever wins gets that title match against Gunther. And I think, let's book it this way. Let's say Seth Rollins beats Punk. Finally gets this monkey off his back. Finally can say that he beat CM Punk, the guy who left the company for a decade. While Seth Rollins feels that he had to carry the company on his back, off of his blood, his sweat, his tears. He carried the company during the darkest of times, 2018 to 2019. Remember that? He was the Intercontinental Champion, the Workhorse Champion, then the Universal Champion during dark times when they couldn't fill up an arena. Look at Stomping Grounds, 2019. Defending them online. Being the company man, while a guy like CM Punk was very vocal about his criticism of Vince McMahon and his company. Finally gets the win. Seth Rollins faces off against Gunther at the Royal Rumble. Who's to say he doesn't win? Who's to say he doesn't earn that championship? And then maybe CM Punk wins the Royal Rumble? Gets a matchup against the world champion, of course, that being Seth Rollins. He alluded to that a couple of weeks ago. CM Punk said, I have no business facing you. He basically said, I don't think about you, Seth. You clearly think about me. I don't think about you because now that you don't have that world title, why should I care? So if Seth wins the world title and Punk wins the Rumble, WrestleMania 41. WrestleMania 41. But that's if, that's an if, a what if. Because CM Punk could beat Seth Rollins and challenge Gunther for the world title. And then we move from there. But reports are saying that apparently the WWE might want CM Punk involved in a world title match at WrestleMania 41. The only issue is, if it's for the world title, it'll either be against Gunther or Seth Rollins. But there's always that Roman Reigns possibility. What is Roman going to be doing at WrestleMania? Sanford 5 says, what if CM Punk beats Seth and gets a title shot at Mania versus Gunther, but Seth wins the Rumble and joins to make it a triple threat? I just said it before you finished. It's a possibility. Can you imagine? But here's the thing. If we think about this, assuming that, okay, going off of that, Punk beats Seth, he gets a title match against Gunther. It's going to be at the Rumble. They don't hold that off till Mania. So I don't see it happening as a triple threat. But I do think the possibility of the Royal Rumble could make it a triple threat. Punk is going to main event night 1. Punk is due for it, man. CM Punk. By the way, let's take a look at the polls here. 20 votes are in the first 11 minutes for what were you most excited for on Raw's Netflix debut. I mean, we're looking at Solo versus Roman with 30%. Punk versus Rollins, 70% of the votes, and nobody is voting for Rhea versus Morgan. And I'm going to be honest with you, I can't blame you. The feud has been elongated to this point. I'm a fan of Morgan, I'm a fan of Rhea, but in comparison to those two matches, that for me is on, third place as well. So I'm not going to argue with you. My vote would also be Punk versus Rollins. But to go back to Sanford 5's comment here, he says that Punk is going to main event night 1 of WrestleMania. That's the goal. It's been CM Punk's goal to main event WrestleMania. Go all the way back to WrestleMania 27, right? Shout out to Kevin. Welcome to the live stream. Appreciate you, brother. Good to see you. We missed you too. Glad you could make it for tonight's live stream following Monday Night Raw on the eve of Christmas Eve for us on the West Coast, but on the eve of Christmas for obviously you on the East Coast. We're talking about CM Punk main eventing WrestleMania potentially. CM Punk, if you go back to WrestleMania 27, leading up to that was, I think, the top heel. The Miz was the WWE champion, obviously had a matchup against John Cena for the WWE title in the main event, and it wasn't really deemed a main event because The Rock's involvement elevated it, but no one looked at The Miz as a legitimate threat. If you ask me, CM Punk versus John Cena should have been the main event at WrestleMania 27. CM Punk was the main heel, the leader of the new Nexus. CM Punk was already feuding with John Cena. Why not cap it off with the number 1 heel versus the number 1 baby face at the number 1 show? But they don't do that. So Punk doesn't get his main event in 2011. 2012, he's a WWE champion. He's the main guy, the top guy. The guy holding the strap that everyone is fighting for. But it just happened to be the same year that The Rock decides to come back from Hollywood and face John Cena. So naturally, that's going to be the main event. So Punk gets ousted again. Fast forward to 2013. The Undertaker versus CM Punk is a marquee matchup. I would absolutely love to see that matchup in a main event. But again, it happened to be CM Punk against The Undertaker on the undercard to who? John Cena and The Rock, part 2. They lied. They said once in a lifetime. They said, here goes another one. They lied to us. It's been documented in the Art of Wrestling podcast between CM Punk and Colt Cabana. He wasn't a fan of that. Again, CM Punk was the hottest star in the company from 2011 to 2013. Arguably 2014, but Daniel Bryan kind of got in the middle of that. CM Punk makes a suggestion. Why not have it be a triple threat match, right? Cena, Punk, Rock. Elimination style. Have Punk walk in as the champion. Punk gets the first pinfall to be eliminated. Now you have your one-on-one matchup between Rock and Cena while also having a little bit of freshness to it. It's not a straight-up one-on-one contest and a rip-off of the last year. You add CM Punk into the wrinkle, who had his beef with both individuals, and make it fresh. But no, they didn't do that either. And then WrestleMania 30 in 2014, the WrestleMania where Daniel Bryan elevates himself to superstardom. Punk was not in attendance. Punk was not on the card because obviously he walked out. Then at WrestleMania 40, makes his huge return, but gets injured, doesn't make it. WrestleMania 41. This is it. This is it. He has to main event night one. Whether it's against Gunther, whether it's against Roman, whether it's against Seth. You know how bad it's going to be if Punk doesn't main event another Mania. He doesn't have that much time left. They got to make use of it now. Let's look at the chat here real quick. Kevin says Punk versus Rollins is this day's Shawn versus Brett. I love it. I love it. It's fantastic. One made the argument that maybe that was McIntyre versus Punk. But I think Punk versus Rollins, just because these two are similar in their style. Shawn and Brett had their similarities, but also their differences. But there was that real life heat. Love the comparison. Shawn versus Brett, probably my all-time favorite rivalry. We've done a video in the past where I talk about my favorite rivalries of all time. Make sure you check that on the archives to see my other favorites on the list. But Punk versus Rollins, excellent comparison there by Kevin. He also says CM Punk deserved a WrestleMania main event. Absolutely. At least one. Should have had one by now. CM Punk versus Undertaker was fire. Absolutely. It was one of my favorite Undertaker matches, especially in the latter years of the streak. CM Punk and Cena had an amazing match on Raw once. That was right. It was in February of 2013 to crown the number one contender to see who would face The Rock at WrestleMania 29. They also busted out a pile driver, if you remember that. What's going on, Muhammad? Welcome to the live stream. Appreciate you stopping by. You're talking about wrestling here on a Monday Night Raw edition of a live stream. And now Kevin asks, love these questions by Kevin, by the way. Who do you think has the better career, Seth or Punk? Keep in mind, Rollins has had the best heist of the century, Money in the Bank steal. I agree. I mean, it is probably the best cash-in of all time. I think that... Sorry, I just skipped ahead to Kevin's comment about seeing Cena bust out the Hurricane Rana. It's crazy. When he was doing that and like the code red and then like a stunner, a springboard stunner, Cena was in his bag in that time. To see the versatility, people were chanting, "You can't wrestle," and Cena said, "Hold on, I got you." Love it. It was awesome. Muhammad wishing the best. Appreciate you. Likewise as well, my friend. But to answer Kevin's question, overall, Seth versus Punk, who had the better career? I'm going to go Punk here. I look at Impact. I think Seth has done everything. WWE champion, world champion, mid-card titles, tag titles, main event WrestleMania. But CM Punk on a grand scheme of things, right? He kind of paved the way for a guy like Seth Rollins. CM Punk really paved the way for a lot of these indie guys. You know, there was a time where CM Punk was the outlier. He was the reject. He wasn't seen as the typical WWE star. He had to carve out his own position in the WWE to the point where it worked against him. He was seen as the top indie darling in Ring of Honor. So where Paul Heyman was pushing for him, that it kind of got heat on Punk because of Paul Heyman's reputation. But with all that being said, being stuck on ECW, being given the world championship and playing second fiddle to all these other storylines, never losing the world title in 2008 because they had to strip him of that title due to a Randy Orton punt. Getting back into the mid-card, reestablishing himself as a main star, as a heel with the Straight Edge Society, and then organically getting over with the pipe bomb, becoming the longest reigning WWE champion in modern history up until that point, of course. He became a martyr. He became a symbol of what it was to be kind of like a contrarian to the WWE style. Without a guy like CM Punk, who's to say a guy like AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, kind of get over in the WWE? I won't give him 100% of the credit, but I do think a guy like Punk and Bryan for sure paved the way for like the current run of the WWE. I think his legacy as well, that 10-year period where he wasn't with the WWE, fans were still chanting his name. He was still omnipresent. He became a ghost, a ghost story. Who's this CM Punk guy? Because if you remember, he was gone for 10 years. Who's to say there wasn't those fans who were like kids growing up and like, who's CM Punk? They keep chanting CM Punk. Who is this guy? And he finally makes the return. Not one, but two huge returns. Obviously, one in AEW, one in WWE. Again, not to say that Seth Rollins hasn't had a better career or hasn't had a great career. I think he has. But I think when you look at the grand scheme and you take a step back, I think Punk. Sanford 5 says, who would cut a better promo, Punk or LA Knight? But good question. I feel like they're two different promos. You know, LA Knight delivers that old school, kind of like a 90s vibe. Obviously, the comparisons with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin are there. LA Knight delivers this great kind of egotistical, confident promo. You know, the guy that can talk smack and back it up. He's like an old school 90s and you know, Rock and Austin. Punk is like his own style. I would like to think he models himself after Roddy Piper. Punk's promos come off so naturally. LA Knight's is a wrestling promo. He has the high energy. He has, you know, the pointing, and he's just old school, and we love it. But when Punk speaks, it feels like he's just talking with us. It doesn't feel like a promo. It just feels like it's coming off so effortlessly. If you ask me who's the better promo, I say Punk. Punk style, for me, is what I look forward to because it's relatable. It's real. Who's more entertaining? Probably LA Knight, depending on who you ask. But I think just CM Punk's style and his approach, it's not like, okay, I'm playing a character and what would my character say in a promo? It's CM Punk saying, well, this is how I feel. So I'm just going to say it. Solid question there by Sanfran5. Kevin says it's funny because at first glance, I thought Punk was a high flyer type of wrestler, like a Justin Gabriel because of his physique. However, his in-ring talent is incredible. I've always looked at Punk as like a technician. I wouldn't say necessarily as like a high flyer. He's had instances where he can hit a cross body. Obviously, the CM and CM Punk can mean a lot of things. It obviously means chick magnet, but he's joked that it's crooked moonsault. So maybe not a high flyer, but he can throw in a little bit in his repertoire, if you will. But and the thing with Punk too is he's able to wrestle so many different styles. Technician, somewhat of a high flyer, submission on occasion, a brawler, and he really matches up with a lot of guys. Great matches against Rey Mysterio, who was smaller than him, guys who are similar in his size, like I'm trying to think, he's had matches with everybody at this point. Jeff Hardy, great matches with him, who's a high flyer, a brawler, kind of like a bruiser brawler with like a Drew McIntyre. And we've seen him have great matches against giants like Brock Lesnar. He meshes well with a lot of styles. Punk is just like a Shawn or Brett, I was going to say Brett Michaels, like a Shawn Michaels or a Bret Hart, where they're just so complementary with their style. Everybody wants to work with them because he can work with anybody. Kevin also says, Jose, who's your Mount Rushmore when it comes to pure in-ring ability? Pure ring okay. Bret Hart, Kurt Angle, Bryan Danielson, Eddie Guerrero. That's my personal four. In-ring work between those four, fantastic. Fantastic. Could have a matchup with anybody. Seems so effortless. And guys that have really been modeled after years later. Kurt Angle just took to wrestling, pro wrestling rather than Olympic wrestling. He took to it like a fish to water. Bret Hart, I mean, the excellence of execution. He made everything seem legit. Everything was so concise, surgical. He was surgical with it. It was a procedure with him. It was an art for him. Bryan Danielson, I just think is one of the all-time greats, especially for a guy of his stature as well. He can sell and in-ring, have great matches with anybody. Like I said, Eddie Guerrero, very similar to what I said about Bryan. And I'm a Shawn guy. I love Shawn. But he was also kind of flashy. You know what I mean? Shawn might be honorable mention for me personally. But that'll be my Mount Rushmore there. Let's see. Martin, what's going on? Welcome to the live stream. Says he's pulling an overnight and listening to the show. It's a perfect way to start my shift. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us on the live stream. Again, on the eve of Christmas Eve or Christmas Eve, depending if you're on the East Coast. We love to talk pro wrestling here on a late Monday night or an early Tuesday morning for those on the East Coast. Of course, Sean What's going on? Welcome to the live stream. Appreciate you stopping by and talking wrestling. Sean also has a question. Do you think the WWE done with USA Network? For Monday Night Raw, they are done. But they recently signed a contract with SmackDown for the foreseeable future. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might be a 5-year deal. Not 100% sure on the details. But I know they have an extension with Friday Night SmackDown in mind. So that'll be the home for the blue brand, USA Network. Raw will be on Netflix for the next 10 years. And the CW Network, home of NXT, the silver and black brand now. Kevin says, I saw your TikTok where you ranked wrestlers. Triple H at 6 or 7 was crazy work. The sequence was funny. You see, okay, I like that you mentioned that. I do those blind rankings, guys. So I don't know who's coming up next. And when it comes to that filter, there are some heavy hitters. Like Shawn pops up, Taker pops up, Cena pops up. So it's like I kind of want to reserve those top 3 for them. Austin and Rock pop up every now and then. Triple H, I would put top 5, but depending on where he pops up on the sequence, he might get stuck at 7, and I'm not going to put him at 1. I love Hunter, fan of Triple H, but I'm not going to put him at 1 when I have like 7 and 3 open or whatever. So I love doing those for 2 reasons. One, it's fun. I like doing the blind rankings, but then there's people who like to comment like, "Oh, he put LA Knight at number 10. And like discrediting, oh, that's trash. LA Knight's not number 10. And I'm like, okay, that's your opinion. But if you look at the spots that were open, I either put LA Knight at number 10 or number 1. And it's like, realistically, are you going to put LA Knight over guys like Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, Triple H? Like, so it's either 1 or 10. I'm going to put him at 10. Especially because, all love and respect to LA Knight. Yeah. Hasn't won a world championship. Hasn't been a main eventer for a long time. Like, I don't know. Again, I've always said, hey, if you don't like my list, make up your own. You don't have to agree with it. It's my personal preference. And it's a blind ranking. How else am I supposed to do it? If it wasn't blind ranking, yeah, it would probably be a better list. But it's blind. Cut me some slack. Give me a break here. Looking at the poll now, still 0% for Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley, but 29% for Solo versus Roman and 71% for Punk versus Rollins. 28 votes within the last 27 minutes. Awesome turnout, guys. Keep voting. Keep letting your voices being heard. Kevin says just recently, DDP and Chris Jericho is this generation's Ric Flair because he's been able to wrestle for 4 decades like Flair. Yeah, you're talking about I think you're talking about the interview with CVV. Love CVV's work. I love listening to his podcast. And I enjoy listening to DDP. Diamond Dallas Page is one of the most positive guys out there, especially in the world of wrestling. That's a dude I would love to meet. Radiates positivity. Just seems like a good dude, especially, to talk about the business, to talk about life. Whenever I listen to DDP speak, I just feel good. He did talk about Chris Jericho being this generation's Ric Flair, which is very appropriate because Ric Flair didn't know when to quit either. He didn't know when to retire. Sometimes it's okay to say no. Ric Flair had a great send-off at WrestleMania 24 against Shawn, and then he continued to wrestle, and it's like, Rick, what are you doing? They're great. They're legends. They're goats of the industry. They don't have to keep going. And it's sad. Because the last thing you want to see are see some of your heroes just decrease in quality. And that's what happens with Chris Jericho. I loved Chris Jericho, man. But now it's like, what is he doing? What is he doing? Put him out of his misery. I know he wants to keep doing it when he's physically able and he has love for the business. And you should. It's your God-given right. Absolutely. But it's like, know your limits. Know your limits, Chris. Sanford 5 says, Jose, we all know the greatest wrestler is the man, the myth, the legend, the Iron Sheik. Yes, Bubba. Sheik number 1. Kevin says Rhea versus Liv was an amazing rivalry. Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. I mean, okay, I was into it, but now we're reaching the point where it's like, okay, we gotta wrap it up. We gotta do something different. You know, like I said, I love Liv, love Rhea, but they gotta move on. I'm hoping this episode of Raw, the Netflix debut, let's cut it. Let's cut it. Finish it. Move on. Have Rhea feud with someone else. Have Liv feud with someone else. You can revisit it, of course, absolutely. But give it time to breathe. Give it time to settle in. You don't gotta do it for a year straight. Thoughts on Ricochet's mic skills? I'm gonna give him credit. Hear me out. We know Ricochet isn't known to be a master of the mic. We know this. Recently, his mic work on AEW has been called into question, more so than not. You know, he's kind of under fire. I wasn't a big fan of like the tweak in his character, where he kind of started saying the aha, you know, like it kind of seemed a little forced to me. But, given what we saw on Collision, on his matchup against Will Ospreay, and we're tweaking him as a heel, that might work in his favor. He can still be, you know, the cocky heel, do the cringy stuff, and have it work in his favor. With Ricochet, though, I think less is more. He doesn't have to talk. He doesn't have to speak a lot. I mean, yeah, he's going to talk eventually. But his main focus, his main level of expertise is obviously the athletic stuff. You want to put your guys in a position to succeed. So have him do what he does best. Wrestle. WWE had him wrestle. They didn't have him speak all the time. I mean, obviously you have to have him speak here and then. But don't put him in a position to fail. You know? If you're on a member of a team, you want to cater to their strengths. You don't want to cater to their weaknesses. And I feel like that's what AEW's been kind of doing lately with him. Doesn't have to talk so much. But I do like that they're turning him heel. Because the crowd was going to turn him heel regardless. And what a way to do it against Will Ospreay. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful with what they're doing with Ricochet now. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he's one of the leaders in the Continental Classic when it comes to his league. So, I don't know. But I'm open to it. I'm hoping that they do something well with him. Because he is a great talent in ring. It's just the mic work. Yeah. How ironic, right? That I believe they're engaged, him and Samantha. Obviously they're together, but I don't know if they're married. I think they're engaged. How ironic is it that she kind of completes him because she's one of the best to ever rock the mic. And he... Yeah. Anyway. 28 votes still in here for the voting poll for most excited for Raw's Netflix debut. Like I said, Liv versus Morgan, or Liv versus Rhea. No votes on the poll here. Solo versus Roman. 29%, about a third of the voting here. Punk versus Rollins seems to be the consensus favorite when it comes to the Raw on Netflix. That should be the main event, right? They've been hinting at it. You know, I believe on the kickoff, the big press conference event that they had on WWE HQ. I believe Michael Cole referred to it as the main event. And it should. I mean, Solo versus Roman, tribal combat, that's huge. That is huge. But I look at it as that's not really the culmination of the Bloodline. It's, again, like we talked about when it came to the six-man tag at Crown Jewel. It wasn't the culmination. It was just a stepping stone. This, again, is not the culmination. I think Roman Reigns gets it, but it's going to be followed by some kind of return. Probably The Rock. If we're being honest, probably The Rock. And if The Rock returns, it'll be the main event. It's going to be Roman and Solo as the main event if The Rock returns. Punk versus Rollins could main event. Should main event if you ask me. But I could see them going with tribal combat. The Bloodline storyline is just so heavily influential to everything WWE. I mean, so many feuds have been started, friendships have been broken because of the Bloodline, the number one story in the world of professional wrestling. So, of course, the debut episode of Monday Night Raw, the flagship show of the WWE, on a big program, on a big streaming service like Netflix, you're going to want to have your biggest, your brightest stars front and center. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the main event. I would go Rollins versus Punk, but something tells me it's going to be tribal combat. More likely with an appearance from The Rock. That's just me fantasy booking. For those of you who are new to the chat, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. We talk professional wrestling here, of course, on a Monday night following Monday Night Raw. We also have the J Area Wrestling Podcast. Every Monday, we have the occasional live stream following Raw and SmackDown. We also are giving out the J Area Awards throughout the rest of the week leading into 2025 with live streams centered around the Rivalry of the Year, Women's Wrestler of the Year, and Tag Team of the Year already taken place. You can catch those in the archives in the previous lives that we've done here on YouTube. Keep an eye out throughout the rest of the week. We will also hand out Male Wrestler of the Year and Match of the Year. So keep an eye out for those live streams where you, the people, the members of the J Area, will have an opportunity to voice your opinions, voice your thoughts on the state of WWE, as well as you guys have the power to name the inaugural winners of these awards. Kevin says, I noticed you've been tuning into AEW more. It's funny how CM Punk called AEW a clown show. So I've always watched AEW since its inception, all the way back in October of 2019. My brother and I, we watched All In, the very first All In 2018. And we've been fans of, being the elite for since 2017. So it's not new for us. I covered a little bit more on the channel because obviously they've been in the news, and it's just depending on the demand. The audience here on the J Area, here on YouTube, I see that you guys very much are inclined to talk about the WWE, which is perfect because I love the WWE. I've watched them since I was a kid. I'd like to think I'm knowledgeable when it comes to the history of that promotion. But the conversation is always open to all elite wrestling. I keep up with it. I watch it. I do think they had a struggle of a 2024, hoping for a more successful 2025. But yeah, fan of AEW, trying to see them regain their footing. In reference to how it's funny that CM Punk called AEW a clown show, when Cody Rhodes and CM Punk both left AEW in the span of, about a year and a half, there's been a striking difference in how it's presented. I think long term, when these NDAs kind of finally go out and they're able to talk about what really happened, I think we're going to find out a lot about AEW and Tony Khan and how his ability to run this wrestling promotion has been called into question by so many critics, journalists, fans alike. I don't want to say it's a clown show because I try to be positive. Here on my channel, I try to promote positivity. There's plenty of negativity out there who are already talking bad about All Elite Wrestling. I don't need to add to that. I don't need to add fuel to the fire that's already been burning for the last few years. But they don't really make it that easy to be positive. I mean, okay, case in point, you talk about Punk. I know, for those who were aware of All Elite Wrestling, let me know if you remember in the chat when they decided to air the All In footage when CM Punk and Jack Perry had that altercation. It was supposed to be like a gotcha moment on CM Punk, but CM Punk had been vocal about the incident. He basically provided a play-by-play analysis of what took place. So all they did was just validate what he said. And I find it now, and I found it then, to be very questionable to reopen a wound like that. All to promote, FTR versus the Young Bucks? It didn't make them look good. It made Punk look honest. Like he was telling the truth, and he really was. If you were to believe his words and then watch the footage, it's like we didn't really learn anything. Questionable. The whole elite takeover thing, I mean, I don't know what that was about. I thought it started off pretty good, pretty promising when you had the Young Bucks and Jack Perry attack Tony Khan. But after that, it's like it just fell flat. So AEW, since losing Punk and Rhodes, you can tell the difference in the production, in the presentation, and just the reputation at this point. It's been tarnished. So again, I'm hoping for a more successful 2025 when it comes to All Elite Wrestling, because I think all competition is good. It's good for competition in pro wrestling to give wrestlers more of an opportunity for jobs, and as well as giving fans more wrestling. Because who would have thought that we would have wrestling on every day of the week? I mean, shoot, that's awesome. Sanford 5 says the footage just shows the maturity Tony Khan has had, but then again, he was scared for his life. That's another thing too. It's a good point by Sanford 5. It shows that they were trying to play the victim, at least from an outside perspective, from me, looking outside in. It's like, you're kind of insecure and you're trying to play the victim. It's like, dude, let it go. Just, you don't got to talk about him anymore. Punk is gone. Which I thought was pretty funny as well, because it's like, you're putting over a guy that's not even on your promotion. People were chanting CM Punk. He was over in 2 different companies. Why are you promoting someone in the rival company? And then Tony Khan, who released that statement following the brawl, the all-in incident, talks about how for the first time in his life, from the standpoint of a fan as well as a promoter, he was scared for his well-being and his life. And it's like, wow, he was scared for his life. Like, that's kind of melodramatic, don't you think? But I mean, even then, it's like, at the risk of being too, I guess, oversharing, there are certain things that you just don't have to do, Tony. Come on now. Kevin says the biggest critique that I've heard of Tony Khan is that he's too nice. Not sure if that's even a bad thing. It could be a bad thing, though, Kevin. Because, okay, with all his faults, Vince McMahon, we know as a human being, from what it's being shared in documentaries and the lawsuit, as a businessman, Vince would try and wrestle Kurt. See, because that's what I'm talking about. Vince stood his ground. Vince, at the end of the day, was the boss. He had the final say. You look at other guys like Vince Russo, who had quite the ideas in WCW and TNA, but at the end of the day, McMahon was the last straw. He knew when to draw the line. With Tony, it's like he's taking all this input from everybody. He has the elite, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, all EVPs. Their boy is Hangman Adam Page. You don't think that has anything to do with it in terms of their presentation? Tony Khan at some point has to be able to say, okay, enough is enough. This is the final straw. I don't know. Obviously, we don't know the inner workings of All Elite Wrestling. It's all pure speculation. If they don't have that writing team already set up, you got to delegate. Because right now, AEW, their slogan is, "Where the best wrestle." That's fine. That doesn't bother me. Because the in-ring work is solid. Guys like Will Ospreay, Darby, Swerve Strickland, and then, Claudio, Pac. Like, you have so much talent on that roster. But what they got to improve on is stories. Why should I care? I love to see a guy like Will Ospreay versus Ricochet, obviously because that match just happened, fight. But at the same time, I want to see a story. Why are they fighting? Why should I be invested? That's just my personal take. Sanford 5, only reason Punk went to AEW was to be reintroduced back into wrestling and just to wrestle and not be in drama. I also think because he wanted to avoid the WWE, I'm thinking that he assumed the door was closed. that he wasn't going to go back. And AEW was something fresh, something new, and in being able to help this new promotion elevate them, elevate a bunch of young talent, and maybe, going off of what we know about Punk, maybe to stick it to the WWE. But given how that ended, look where he's at now. Back in the WWE, back in the top promotion, and a top star in all of pro wrestling. It worked out well for Punk, even if it caused him a couple of headaches when it came to Matt and Nick Jackson. Kevin says, I never found the allure towards Adam Page. Jose, please educate on his work because I truly do not know his past work. So Adam Page, it's interesting with him because we obviously knew him as a member of the Bullet Club and the Elite, around guys like Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, hell, even Marty Scurll. I can never say it right. Marty the villain, who we don't talk about anymore because apparently he's a real villain. He was never seen as the guy. He was just one of the young guns. I was going to say Young Bucks. One of the young guns on that team. So when we got to AEW, it presented the opportunity to push a new star. Hangman Adam Page organically got over with the crowd because of his persona, as well as that time where he had a little bit of a dark streak to him. He started developing a little bit of a drinking problem, and again became melodramatic. And it was a story. We got to see Hangman Adam Page rise to the top, fall to the bottom, only to climb his way back up to the top of All Elite Wrestling. I get it. He's not everyone's cup of tea. But Adam Page's story is one of the more organic stories that AEW has told. His feud with Swerve Strickland and allowing him to show this more maniacal and paranoia side of Hangman, again, elevates him even more. I want to see Hangman Page win the title again in 2025. Now, he might not be everyone's cup of tea, which is fine. But for me, he is truly one of those homegrown talent in All Elite Wrestling. Not like a Moxley, who made his name obviously in CCW and the WWE. Not like a Bryan Danielson, Kenny Omega, who were all already big stars. It was Hangman Adam Page finally getting to the top, realizing that he didn't want to be in the shadow of the Elite. He was the partner to Kenny Omega. That didn't work out. Finally got to be the one to defeat Kenny Omega after that whole reign of terror as AEW champion. And it was really just overshadowed by Punk. Not in a bad way, because Punk is Punk. He's going to obviously attract a lot of attention. But when Adam Page went into business for himself and tried to make a work shoot, and it really became the downfall of AEW. And, not to say that they're already, dying, but it's that level of momentum that they lost. So Adam Page, I think, is one of their better wrestlers and certainly one of their more consistent storytellers. The Strickland matchup was great. Swerve Strickland says, Kevin says Strickland is money. I love Strickland. Swerve is he's so cool. As the world champion, they treated him like a world champion. I remember they would have these like countdowns in the corners where it said, the world champion will speak in 29 minutes. And Swerve Strickland with the whole Prince Nana, the entrance, the vibe, just awesome. Awesome. Swerve Strickland is on my top list of who I enjoy. Him and Will Ospreay and Darby. All three of those guys are my favorites in AEW right now. MJF on AEW is money. AEW has many fans just based from MJF. MJF is an old school heel. He's a heel's heel. He works as if it's the 80s. He keeps the kayfabe alive. He's a jerk in real life. And I love that some people are very critical of that. Like, oh, he tossed the WWE Championship on the floor and he wasn't nice to fans. It's like, dude, he's a heel. That's pretty cool if you ask me, where he lives the gimmick. I will say his feud with Adam Cole, though, is outwearing its welcome. I'm hoping that, all loose ends are tied up at World's End. But MJF is one of their best stars, for sure. Tyler, what's going on? Welcome to the live stream. Appreciate you stopping by, talking about pro wrestling, of course. Welcome to the live stream. Kevin says, Jose, this summer I'm working across from WWE headquarters. I recently got a summer internship, and it's in Connecticut, where the headquarters are. Dude, that's crazy. That's awesome, by the way. Congratulations on that. I don't know if they still have Titan Towers. I'm pretty sure they moved over to another building. But regardless, I mean, hey, that's awesome, dude. Congrats on that. Obviously, we closed our poll here. 72% of you voted for Punk versus Rollins as what you're most excited for when it comes to Raw's Netflix debut. I would have to agree. I would have to agree with you on that. Muhammad, what's going on? Muhammad says Punk and Hangman Adam Page got so heated and they got Colt Cabana in the mix at one point. True. I mean, they talked about it. Adam Page made a reference during that shoot promo in the ring where he says, "You want to talk about workers' rights," and alluded to the fact that Hangman, or rather Colt Cabana, wasn't being used on TV as much, and referenced that that was Punk's doing. And Punk denied it, you know, which I don't know, we don't know, right? But yeah, getting Colt Cabana involved, it's kind of dicey there. They're no longer friends, and they were like lifelong friends for the early part of the 2000s. But that whole run with AEW was so controversial for CM Punk. It really put on blast his volatile personality within AEW. Kevin says, "I like Solo because we've seen him grow from not talking to carrying promos on his own is incredible. The growth of Solo Sikoa should not go unnoticed. I didn't like the early iteration of his tribal chief gimmick, Solo Sikoa, because to me, he felt like he was just trying to be a carbon copy of Roman Reigns. But to be fair, you could chalk that up as Solo Sikoa being the little brother, obviously to the Usos, and the little cousin to Roman. So he's gonna try to emulate Roman Reigns. He's taking up after him. He's watched him. He's followed him, and so he's gonna imitate him. But now, recently, I think he's growing more comfortable. I think he's growing more confident in his words. And so we're seeing a little bit more personality from Solo Sikoa. I enjoy that. It's a nice change from Roman Reigns. When Roman Reigns was the tribal chief, very serious in his promos, very dominant with his promos. You knew who the top dog was when it came to Roman. Solo was trying that, and for me, it was like a cheap imitation. But now that we're getting a little bit more personality, a little bit of more arrogance from Solo Sikoa, and who wouldn't be extra confident because of the inclusion of the Tongans and Jacob Fatu. I like that little air of confidence and arrogance from Solo Sikoa. It gives a little flavor as the tribal chief. Muhammad makes reference to Colt Cabana and CM Punk being brothers and best friends, yeah, for the longest. Kevin says, does WWE still do those Grammy type of award shows still? For example, in 2009, Shawn received an award for Match of the Year with Taker and ended up setting up that year's WrestleMania, the Slammies. So I don't know if they're going to do one next year, but I know the latest Slammy Award had taken place, I think the night before WrestleMania 40. If not the night before, it was leading up to it, like Thursday or Friday or whatever the case may be. I think that's what they're going to end up doing. I wouldn't be surprised if we have another Slammy Award on the week leading up to WrestleMania 41, especially because it's in Vegas. You know, the entertainment capital of the world, the fight capital of the world. I'm sure they're going to have some type of event. I would think Slammy Awards, if they do make a return, it'll be like this last one. It'll be leading up to WrestleMania. Great shout out there, by the way, as well, for the Shawn Michaels moment there in 2009 that set up 2010, the retirement streak versus career matchup, an all-time moment. I love that, by the way. If I can segue real quick. When Shawn Michaels accepted that award for Match of the Year at WrestleMania 25, he was thanking the audience. He was thanking the fans. And then he was going to walk off, and he stopped. And he looked at the camera, right deadpan. And he called him out. He said, "The Undertaker, I know I can beat you." And it laid the seeds for one of the greatest sequels in WrestleMania history. One of the greatest sequels in pro wrestling history. Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. Two of the all-time GOATs. And an all-time GOAT moment in Slammy Award history. Kevin says, I ask because Solo deserves a Most Improved Wrestler award. Yeah. I mean, but see, here's the thing. I think definitely Solo Sikoa deserves that. He's earned it. But are there others that could maybe prevent him from winning? Because I don't know. Listen, hear me out. Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre we know is great. But I just feel like this feud with Punk put him over even more. Especially on the mic. But I do think Solo Sikoa warrants recognition for his work within the last year. Muhammad says, speaking of Shawn Michaels, it is so unfortunate that we will not get him versus AJ Styles, just like Taker versus Sting. Both matches, I think, in their primes, would have been fantastic. There was rumors and speculation that at Royal Rumble 2017, that was in San Antonio, Texas, that we would have seen a WWE champion AJ Styles versus Shawn Michaels. I would have been against it. I was against Shawn coming out of retirement for Crown Jewel when it was DX versus the Brothers of Destruction. When you retire, it's like you shouldn't come out of retirement, especially for a guy like Shawn, who had a great send-off at WrestleMania 26, and for selfish reasons, because I was in attendance, I wanted to be able to say I saw Shawn's last match. But because he came out of retirement, I can say I saw him in his last good match, his last WrestleMania match. But AJ versus Shawn would have killed it. Those guys, two masters of their craft, and give them 30 minutes, would have been magic. Taker versus Sting should have happened at WrestleMania 31, but they didn't pull the trigger. Shame. Kevin says, currently watching the story of Triple H versus The Undertaker. Incredible how Taker was undisputed champion. Honestly, deserved more world championships. You know, you could say that he deserved more title wins, but The Undertaker as a gimmick didn't need it. He was an attraction. He was like Andre, you know? Like, Andre won the WWE Championship back at the main event in February of 88, even though he held it for a couple minutes. But it's like, they didn't need it. They were already so big stars. Now, Taker obviously could have kept winning. He was, I think, a 7-time champion, having won the WWE title 4 times and the world title 3 times, I believe. He didn't need more. You could argue he didn't even need the championship. But a guy like Taker, he's a soldier. You know, he's going to do the work that needs to be done. And I thought Taker was a great world champion. Muhammad says, or WrestleMania 27. True, there was rumors that Sting could have signed in 2011 to face off against The Undertaker at WrestleMania 27. That would have been cool too. But it would have taken away from the great saga that was DX versus The Undertaker, you know, from WrestleMania 26 to 28. I think when it comes to that saga, you could even make the argument that the DX versus Taker saga starts with the Royal Rumble 2007. I mean, the Royal Rumble 2007, when they're in the final 2, having a great showdown there in San Antonio, Texas. The following year, in 2008, where it's the Royal Rumble, and they start the matchup. Then obviously 2009 and 2010, they have their matchup. 2011 and 2012, more to come. I think it's one of the greatest stories ever told, whether it was intentional or not. Kevin says, in the story, Triple H goes against Hulk Hogan. I love it because I never got to see Hogan on TV. We must be talking about Backlash. Was it 2002? When it was, Hollywood Hogan defeating Triple H for the title. And then that's when Undertaker takes it away at Judgment Day. That's crazy. You never got to see Hogan on TV. I only got to see Hogan wrestle in WWE. I only got to see him wrestle 3 times. There was a 6-man tag on Raw. It was like him, Batista, and Cena on one side. Saw Hogan wrestle at SummerSlam 05 and then SummerSlam 06. But I never got to see the, like in his prime. Never got to see that. Tyler, so I want to work with you as my one booking team. It's going to be great for my pro wrestling. Hey, I'd be honored. You know, I'm not going to pretend like I'm the greatest booker in the world, but I feel like with a great team around us, we could book some good shows, I think. But maybe that's just me with the confidence. Kevin, Jose, what's the craziest WWE rumor you ever heard? Perhaps an indie wrestler coming over to WWE Backstage. So, Craziest rumor I've ever read. It's not really when it comes to like an indie wrestler. If we want to talk about indie wrestler coming over, I'll give you two. I'll answer one with an indie wrestler, and I'll give you one backstage. The backstage one is crazy. Indie wrestler. If you're familiar with 1999, it was the higher power storyline where the Ministry of Darkness, the Undertaker, had been listening to a hooded figure. Right? He was the higher power. He directed everything. He was the director of the Undertaker. Kidnapping Stephanie and crucifying Stone Cold Steve Austin. And it was like, who is this higher power? The rumor and speculation was that it could have been Jake the Snake Roberts, who could have been that leader. Awesome. That would have been great. There's another rumor that a young Christopher Daniels, a very young early incarnation of the fallen angel, Christopher Daniels, could have been the higher power, but because of his size, it wasn't deemed credible, so they just went with Vince. Not the best choice, but I mean, how ironic you get a demonic character and Vince is the reveal. I would have loved to have seen Jake in that position. I would have thought it would have been crazy to see a young CD in WWF during the Attitude Era. Backstage, I think one of the craziest stories, and forgive me for those who are squeamish, is about Randy Orton and his reputation with the bags of certain WWE divas. For those who don't know, I might just ruin your childhood here when it comes to Randy Orton. It's pure rumor and speculation. Obviously, I can't confirm or deny. But that Randy Orton, as a rib and as a joke, would defecate into certain people's bags. See, San Fran 5 already knew where I was going. That he would defecate into the bags of certain members of the roster. Don't know if that's true, but I think that's one of the craziest things I've ever read about. So now you guys know. Muhammad, keep in mind, Undertaker faced Triple H 2 consecutive years during that time. That's correct. It was WrestleMania 27 and 28. Not to mention, technically, they have faced 3 times at Mania, with the first being in 2001 at WrestleMania 17 in Houston, Texas. Kevin, yes, that was Backlash. I know because I love the setup of Backlash. I think it was 2002, where they had like the blades swinging back and forth. It was either 2002 or 2000. That was awesome. Sanford 5, what about the Coke story? The Coke bust of Hacksaw and Iron Sheik. A lot of crazy road stories. Obviously, Iron Sheik and Hacksaw Jim Duggan might have been caught partying a little bit too much and partaking in the white snow on one drive. Yeah, there's a lot of them, honestly. There's a lot of them. Honestly, we could do an entire live stream, an entire video just talking about wrestling conspiracies, wrestling rumors, and that might be it. I am thinking about doing more live streams, exclusive live streams as well. As I talked about in the past, we're trying to I believe it was 40 hours left. We're really close to approaching memberships here on YouTube, and the goal with that is to open up memberships for the loyal fans, the members of the J area who have been with us since the beginning. We want to be able to give you guys more exclusive content, live streams on top of live streams, more interactive content, as well as some behind the scenes or maybe even a blast from the past. I'm thinking about doing more content revolving around the past, the WWE, kind of like a history lesson for those of us who need a refresher or for those who just want to talk about wrestling. Muhammad, and now Randy Orton, is now the locker room leader now that The Undertaker is out of the spotlight and picture. It's really crazy to think about, huh? Randy Orton, yeah, kind of a controversial figure when it came to behind the scenes. And then, now seeing him as a leader and a family man. Good for Randy Orton. Getting married with Kim, their children. Super happy for Randy. And again, it's just rumor and speculation. We don't know if it's true or not. But I'm super happy to see Randy and the maturity and the growth. Kevin says, recently saw the documentary about Jimmy Snuka and the hotel story. Wild, right? I mean, the Jimmy Snuka stuff. It's sad. It really is sad for everyone involved, you know. But Dark Side of the Ring has So much great episodes. Sad episodes, morbid episodes for sure. But just wild stuff when it comes to the backstage stuff about pro wrestling. Great storylines, great episodes on that. Obviously, what happened with Fabulous Moolah and her upbringing with the women's wrestlers, and how she basically pimped out the women's wrestlers. You know, that's one of them that comes to mind. The relationship between Savage and Elizabeth. Like, there's a lot of stuff on Dark Side. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you have Hulu, look up Dark Side of the Ring. Crazy stories when it comes to pro wrestling, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Dark Side, great documentary series. Plane Ride from Hell, Santa from 5, great pickup there. Plane Ride from Hell, a lot of stuff to go off of that. Kevin says Lesnar almost opening the plane hatch door, crazy with his. I think he was fighting against Mr. Perfect. Michael's hair getting his hair cut off. Goldust serenading his then ex-wife, Terry Runnels. What else was there? Ric Flair in his robe and, you know, revealing himself to members of the staff, the stewardess and the members of the staff. A lot of crazy stuff there. Muhammad, possibly The Miz and CM Punk as well. Oh, are we talking about locker room leaders? Yeah. Cody Rhodes is another locker room leader, I would say. Kevin says, also saw a documentary of Chris Kanyon, how tough it was for him being a closeted wrestler. That's a sad story too, man. And to see him in his, like, one of the last appearances where he's singing to The Undertaker because he was revealed as, like, a character in the box, and again was singing as a distraction to The Undertaker. I think it was Boy George. He was singing, and just the chair shots, the devastation of the chair shot to Chris Canyon's head. Yes, rest in peace to Chris Kanyon. Kevin says he had a good match against Perry Saturn. Shout out Perry Saturn. Shout out Perry Saturn. Shout out Moppy. One of the greatest promos I've ever seen by Perry Saturn. Not to dive away from Chris Kanyon. Again, rest in peace to Chris Kanyon. But on a lighter note, one of my favorite promos from Perry Saturn was following the concussion angle where he goes into the back, and I believe it was Terry Runnels and Dean Malenko who approach him, and they ask me, Perry, you okay? You know, he got hit on the head. I think it was Raven. He might have been fighting that night. And he has his hat on, the fluffy hat that Perry Saturn would usually wear, and he would say, like, what is it? Rabbits eat carrots so they can make babies? You're welcome. And proceeds to walk away. And then develops this infatuation with a mop known as Moppy. And the story behind that is apparently it was like a punishment. It was supposed to be a punishment because he had faced off against a local competitor, a jobber, if you will, and he was rough with him and, like, humiliated him basically. And so they stuck him with the mop. Even though I thought it was one of the funniest things. Rabbits eat carrots so they can make babies. You're welcome. Kevin says, just a few days ago, I watched WCW Thunderstorm event. They had one cool PLE ideas. I would like to see more WCW stuff in the WWE. You know, recognizing them. Muhammad said, speaking of Perry Saturn, how come he is not close with Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko anymore? Well, one, I mean, Chris Benoit is no longer with us and will never be mentioned in a positive light again. Separating him from the man and the wrestler is one thing, but you would be very hard-pressed to see anybody talk positively about Chris Benoit. Like, it's a touchy subject. As for Dean Malenko, I don't know. Last time I heard, I think Dean Malenko was in AEW working as an agent and a producer. And who's to say that they're not friends? We don't know. We don't know if Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko aren't close anymore. But as for Benoit, we know why. Kevin says seeing Thunder flashes appear when they're introducing the wrestlers was fire, ahead of their time in terms of marketing. You got to give credit to WCW, even though a lot of people kind of poo-poo on the idea that in terms of booking it was bad. From a television standpoint, from a production standpoint, WCW was good. They were on TNT. They had Turner behind them. Solid sets. great presentation. Again, not the best in terms of booking, but aside from that, yeah, in marketing, I think they were ahead of their time, and they forced the WWE to kind of up their game. That's why I think competition is key. Sanford 5 says, never forget Daniel Puder in the Royal Rumble 2005. Again, another individual who got punished. He was a member of the Tough Enough class of 2004, having a competition against Kurt Angle, seeing if he could last. I think it was like 30 seconds to a minute. But he puts him in a Kimura lock and doesn't let go and basically could break Kurt Angle's arm. And so the referee has to think fast, and they pin him, fast count, get him out of the ring. And a way to punish him, they put him in the Rumble to start off against Benoit, Hardcore Holly, and Eddie Guerrero. 3 grizzled veterans, all tough SOBs, and they lay the chops on Daniel Puder and eliminate him. And then from there, we really don't see him ever again. Muhammad says, Chris Jericho, Chavo Guerrero Jr., Dean Malenko, Hardcore Bob Holly is Chris's B still close with. I don't know how you can say that, though, because Chris Benoit has been dead for, 17 years? They're not close with him anymore. Jericho, Chavo, I'm sure they're cool. Dean, obviously, friend of the Guerreros. Bob Holly. Can't speak on Bob Holly. Don't know a lot about Bob Holly. I mean, like, outside of his WWE stuff. Once he left the WWE, haven't kept up with him post WWE. Kevin, if you had to build a faction, who would you make the head of that faction? So that's a loaded question. A great question. I would go 4 people. And it's like, are we doing all... Answer me this, Kevin. I need your help. Are we talking all time or like right now? Because that kind of would help me out in terms of like building it. All time or right now? All time. Okay. Thank you for answering that pretty quickly. So, all time. We need a solid leader. Someone with direction. Someone who's not afraid to call the shots. That's tough, man. That's a good question. Who would make it the head of the faction? Because if I make a faction, it might just end up being some of my favorite wrestlers. Rest in peace to Brian Pillman. Shout out to Sanford 5 there. Oh, man. All time. So I want to go with guys that never got to interact with each other. Because I think that would be super cool. I have 2 in mind. So this is what I want to do. Hear me out. I have a leader in mind. I have the secondary in mind. And I kind of want to include a tag team. That way we can cover all bases. Let's go. All time. Sanford 5 says, especially with the Stone Cold House angle. Crazy moment there. I'm going to answer your question, Kevin, but in the back of my mind, I'm going to pick those last 2. Sanford 5, especially with the Stone Cold. Dude, when the Pillman Got a Gun segment on Raw aired, obviously before a lot of our time, but how crazy is that? What a vivid memory or vivid image when obviously Austin 316 is saying, and then Pillman says, Pillman 9mm blows your, like, it's like, and he pulls out the gun and it's like, whoa, like, that's crazy. I remember watching that as a kid. I had bought the Raw anthology set, actually right here. And in this one, I had to be 10. When it came out. And so that was on the disc. I was 10 years old and I saw that and whoa, like that was That was crazy. I remember, again, as a kid, just being shocked. I knew who Stone Cold was. Didn't know who Pillman was at that time. I was 10 years old, and he already passed away 10 years prior. But it's like, that's one of those moments where it's like super shocking. Like, you would never think, dude. Shout out to Muhammad. Didn't know that Bob Holly was supposed to be at his house that day. Didn't know that. I know he was in contact with Chavo Guerrero. Obviously, that's been well documented, the last days of Chris Benoit during that weekend in 2007. I really am trying to think. I'm sorry, Kevin. So I'll tell you who. Okay, my first two, right? For the faction, I'm going to have CM Punk as the leader, right? I'm a CM Punk guy. You guys know this. With him, as kind of like the Ric Flair role in Evolution, because he's a little older, but assuming everyone's like in their prime, Roddy Piper. I would love to see a tag team of Roddy Piper and CM Punk. Those are the two. You know what? Let's just throw in. I'm gonna throw AJ Lee in there because I love AJ Lee, love a relationship with Punk, and I kind of want to see them together. So there's technically be 5. So we're gonna add someone from the women's division there, AJ Lee, and then for a tag team to be with Punk, Piper, and AJ Lee. Because I also wanted to make a little bit of sense. I want a sense of continuity. And for me, it's like, well, why not go to people he's interacted with? People he has a history with. Maybe potential Paul Heyman guys. Because, they were together at some point. We all know the tag team you'll pick is Paul London and Brian Kendrick. I was thinking about someone like in the 2000s. Right? Or let's please add Kofi and CM Punk's. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I'll go with Muhammad on this. Let's add Kofi in there. I'll add Kofi because he is a friend. He is a former tag team champion with Punk, and it would make sense. I'll give you that. But then I need a 4th because I do want 4 guys and AJ Lee being the 5th. Or, we don't want too many mouthpieces, honestly. Wait, teams from the 2000s? That's easily the Basham Brothers or the Mexicools. Shut up. See, now I kind of want to revamp it. No, I can put Piper, but for though you need a heater, so add Luke Gallows. I thought about Luke Gallows, but it's like we did see that already with the Straight Edge Society, and I wanted to do something fresh, something different. Luke Gallows isn't a bad pick, though. Oh, you know what? Hear me out, because they are friends in real life, and I would love to see this. Brody King. Brody King, Punk. I'll keep Piper. We'll keep Kingston. I don't know. Now I'm thinking at it logistically. I don't know if I like it. AJ Lee stays. Brody King stays. Punk is the leader. I can keep Kingston. But I'm looking at Piper. Like, do I want Piper there? Because Piper's a big personality. And him and Punk, I don't know. So I'm going to take out Piper. I'm going to take out Piper. Brody King, Kofi, Punk, AJ, and I want a veteran. So I'm looking at guys like maybe like a Terry Funk or a Harley. Muhammad, Brody King needs to leave AEW first in order. Yeah, but here's the thing though. Dude, you said Danhausen, and Danhausen's with AEW. Here's the thing though. Kevin told me I could build a faction, and it's all time. So I'm not even worried about Brody King being in AEW right now. Danhausen, no. I don't want it to be silly. And Danhausen, he's not my cup of tea. Like, he's cool, don't get me wrong. Like, but not for my faction. Rick Rude, Paul Heyman, Vader as the Enforcer, and MJF. That's beautiful. That's pretty cool. Who would be the leader, though? Would it be like Rick Rude as the leader, MJF as like the protege, Vader obviously the enforcer, Heyman as the mouthpiece? Did you already think of that? Because you gave me like a kind of on the spot there. What am I doing? Honestly, I love Piper. I'm gonna take your idea. Punk, Heyman. Keep Kingston only if he's heel. Brody King, AJ Lee, all heels. I'm going heel faction because I think Punk is way better as a heel, and it'll be cool. Punk trying to regain control of the WWE. This was my company. I left. I'm coming back to reclaim the WWE title. Brody King's the enforcer. Heyman obviously trying to get back at Roman, who's now a babyface with the Bloodline. AJ Lee coming back saying, hey, all these people here, all the women here, take notice of me. They take from me. I'm here to show you that I'm the one that started this revolution. I'm here to show you that I'm better than all of you. Her run as a heel champion I thought was great. Paul Heyman's great as a heel. Kofi Kingston just turned heel and can be that mid-card champion. So we're locking it in there. Punk, Heyman, Kofi, Brody King, AJ Lee. But I really like your pick there, Kevin. Rick Rude, Heyman, Vader, and MJF. That's pretty cool. Kevin says I did. Not gonna lie, I love Rick Rude. Love Rick. Awesome heel and Vader because I'm recently going through a Vader phase, watching a ton of his work in WCW. What have you been watching of his? One of his favorite feuds that I like to go through is obviously the Cactus Jack feud. Him and Mick Foley having feuded over the WCW championship. And it's always refreshing to see Vader in WCW because the WWE just didn't capitalize on him. I recently saw a clip resurface on Twitter of, I think it was like one of his last matches against Kane. And they take off his mask and Paul Bearer is running around with the mask. And Vader on TV, on the microphone, basically just puts himself down. He's burying himself. And he says, like, oh, I'm fat. I'm just a piece of, like. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, this is Big Van Vader. One of the greatest big men of all time. One of the greatest wrestlers ever. Someone that they put in the Hall of Fame way too late. Way too late. If you ask me, 2011 could have been the year that he went to the Hall of Fame. They were in Atlanta, Georgia, the home of WCW. He already appears on Raw the next year in 2012. I've also been going through a Bam Bam Bigelow phase. Bam Bam's crazy. Bam Bam, you know what I'm going through right now? Because you speak about Bam Bam Bigelow, and I watched recently his match against Taz. I'm going through an ECW phase. I've been watching a lot more ECW lately. Not as in-depth in my knowledge about ECW. I know about like the surface stuff, but I've been watching a lot. I mean, Rob Van Dam. I just saw Rob Van Dam versus Jerry Lynn. And it was on the WWE Vault YouTube channel, which, I mean, big shout out to WWE Vault. The 2 out of 3 falls match between Juventud Guerrera and Rey Mysterio. So I'm on an ECW fix right now. But Bam Bam Bigelow, the Beast from the East. Big shout out to Bam Bam. Again, not in the Hall of Fame. I think he warrants it. I think he's earned it, but not in the Hall of Fame. What's up with that? But that was a good question, though. Really good question when it came to forming a faction. That was fun. It gave me a little bit of a headache. I will say, but awesome. Kevin says, "Oh, dude, I got into wrestling because of ECW. I was way too young for ECW, and it was already over when I was a kid. I was born in '03. However, my cousin was older than me and had ECW DVDs. Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, yeah. So you were '03. I'm '98. So I was still relatively young. I wasn't able to catch it live. I remember watching like the rise and fall of ECW documentary and the whole one night stand events as like my introduction to ECW. And it's just so cool, man. It's like this renegade promotion, very underground, very different, but had a variety of stuff to it. High flyers, technicians. Obviously, you had your hardcore wrestling. But I mean, when you have talent like Rob Van Dam, Sabu, Taz, Eddie Guerrero, Benoit, Mysterio, Psychosis, Super Crazy, like so many people I'm not naming, Bam Bam Bigelow, um, ECW, man, what an awesome promotion. Shout out to Paul Heyman and the boys down in Philly. And the fact that your cousin had the DVDs, that's cool too. That's awesome. Mike Awesome versus Spike Dudley. Mike Awesome, yeah. Spike Dudley, who again never really got a. He was entertaining in the WWE, but I don't think he ever reached the level that he had in ECW. Mike Awesome is ECW champion. His fights with Tanaka, I mean, obviously well documented their rivalry. A great showing at One Night Stand in '05. And talk about, I mean, historic when he was ECW champion and he was contracted to the WCW. So the WWE had a contract with Taz, and then they fought. So they had a WWE guy against a WCW guy fighting for an ECW championship. Crazy. Crazy work. But yeah, ECW, a renegade promotion. Just awesome. No pun intended for Mike. Whatever happened to Mike? Did Mike why do I feel like Mike passed away? I feel like he did in '07. Oh. Yeah, I just read how he passed away. Rip Mike Awesome. San Fran. Dude, I remember watching the old WWE pay-per-views on DVD, and we would see the ECW ads and how I wanted to watch it, but you never wanted me to get into it. Okay, because you were young, dude. I had a responsibility. I had an obligation as an older brother to ensure that you weren't watching things you weren't able to watch. But I mean, now nothing's stopping us. Rip Mike Awesome, Rip Umaga too. He could have been an amazing WWE champion. Rest in peace. Muhammad, who died. Yes, that is correct. Muhammad. CCW makes ECW looks like child's work. Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is too, when things have been done, you kind of have to overdo it. You know, you kind of got to take the next step. And CCW, I mean, look at what happened with Nick Gage and how he basically almost bled out. Sanford 5, your dude RVD and Sabu looked cool. Oh, but dude, I mean, yeah, no, RVD and Sabu, just awesome. And thankfully, thanks to like YouTube, where you have the WWE Vault, they're uploading so much more content and old matches. That's awesome. But yeah. So again, little reset here. San Fran 5. When I think of CCW, I always think of the Jesus interview from Botchamania. Zandig, I believe. What a crazy promo by Zandig. There was 5 of them. 5 of them. Jesus. Yeah, no, what a classic promo. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Obviously, tomorrow. Well, I mean, now it's Christmas Eve, technically. There will not be a live for Tuesday night on the 24th. There will not be a live. Obviously, going to be spending time with the family for the holidays. Hope you guys are able to do the same. The 25th, maybe. I wouldn't bet against it, but at the same time, it is Christmas, a time to spend with family. So keep an eye on the community tab. I always try to give you guys a heads up. If not, usually on the channel you can see when there's a live scheduled. I try to do it hours in advance, at least a minimum of 5 hours of a heads up, just to guys give you, basically to know what's going on. And then after that, we'll be basically rocking and rolling into 2025, a big year that I'm looking forward to. We made great strides here in the J area during the year 2024. The growth has been astronomical. We entered the year with 49 subs, and it looks like we're going to close the year with nearly 2,300 subs, in large part to you guys and your devotion to pro wrestling, your fandom of pro wrestling, as well as your fandom of the J area, an area dedicated for pro wrestling fans by pro wrestling fans. So first and foremost, I want to thank you guys again. I can never thank you guys enough for the level of support, for the confidence that you guys have had in this channel since day one of joining. So appreciate that. And like I said, 2025 looking to be a big year. We're going to open up memberships for our devoted members of the J area, and hopefully pretty soon we'll be able to include more content than we ever had before. So big things for 2025. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Kevin says, Merry Christmas Eve, Jose. Likewise, my friend. Merry Christmas Eve to you as well and to your family. Dude, I saw that Taker hung Big Boss Man on... Oh, Jesus. We went from Merry Christmas to the hanging of Big Boss Man. Oh my God. WrestleMania 15. Again, another one of those moments where I watched as a young kid and I was like, what? It's infamous. He was hanging people, crucifying people. Muhammad, happy early Christmas. Happy early Merry Christmas to you as well, especially. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you and yours as well, Muhammad. Appreciate it. Crazy transition is right, Kevin. What the hell, man? He asks, which wrestler do you think has the greatest merch item? Put yourself in the shoes of a kid who wants something for Christmas. I'm a simple guy. I think the greatest merch of all time is the Austin 316 shirt. I really do. It was simple. It's to the point. It's black, identifiable. The shirt on the back had the skull and everything. I think the Austin 316 shirt is the greatest t-shirt of all time. If I was a kid at that time, I would have asked for it. I have a copy of it, actually. A copy of it like it's a movie or something. I have my own shirt of Austin 316. Obviously, I have worn it on videos in the past, but I think it's one of the greatest wrestling merch of all time. San Fran 5 says, Jose, we all know that John Cena DVD documentary is mine, not yours. No, buddy, it was mine. It was always mine. I told you we can share it, but it stays with me. There was one year for Christmas. There was a John Cena documentary DVD. Actually, you know what? Do I have it right here? I do. This is the one in question. It said it had his name on it though. They made a mistake. I hate to tell you, but they made a mistake. I told you we can share. I have no problem sharing it. Kevin says Bret Hart's glasses. I heard kids went crazy for back then. That's a good one. Such a cool tradition too for Bret, like to come out to the ring and being able to give the glasses to the kids, and it was a great moment for them. I don't know if we'll ever have something that's similar to it. It's like I look at like Jey Uso, and Jey Uso's sunglasses are pretty cool. He could easily do that as well. Ray did it with his masks. Maybe Ray with his mask and being able to purchase that. Who doesn't love a good luchador mask? San Fran 5 says, Jose, it's like sharing the WWE title. It's impossible to share. I mean, when you put it that way. I guess. They can never go wrong with WWE action figures. You can never. I mean, of course. Of course. I mean, WWE action figures are elite. Not anymore. I don't like the new style of them. You know? It's hard typing from my phone. Don't judge me. No one's judging you. No judgment. I still stand by the merch of the t-shirt. Austin 316. Bret Hart glasses are a good answer. Kevin says, I live in a predominantly Mexican community in the Bronx. Shout out all Mexicans. And during Halloween, I saw many Rey Mysterio. Yeah, I mean, Rey Mysterio has become the poster child for, Lucha Libre and just Hispanics alike. He's a superhero. He's one of the greatest of all time. I do believe Rey Mysterio is the greatest masked luchador of all time. With names like El Santo, Blue Demon, Mil Máscaras. Those guys are great. Absolutely. Legends. But from a global standpoint, Rey Mysterio blows them out the water. From a global standpoint. Greatest of all time. We have some as well. I don't know where they're at. They might be like in our storage unit. But we've had a few Rey Mysterio masks as well. Remember the Flex Force toys? Dude, we were lucky. We grew up in an era where I thought the action figures were peak. Like, they weren't too loose, but at the same time, they weren't stuck like in just one position. Nowadays, it's like they basically fight for you. Martin asks, what would you ask for Christmas growing up? I was a very simple kid, I thought. I would ask for like a bunch of action figures. I mean, anybody at that point. John Cena, The Undertaker, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, like anybody. Titles, the replica titles. Not like the big deal title back here, but like the kid ones. Like the foam titles we would ask for. Movies, I'm obviously a big movie guy when it comes to WWE or just any movies in general. But again, I'm keeping this wrestling related for what I would ask for Christmas. Obviously, wrestling DVDs, wrestling titles, wrestling action figures. Sometimes I would ask for like a copy of like the WWE magazine. And I got my parents, I mean, God bless them, they didn't have to. They got me like a year subscription to WWE magazine and they would come in the mail. And I have a bunch of them. I think they're in the storage unit as well. I have a bunch of them as well. Dude, remember the WrestleMania 20 Rey Mysterio action figure you had? Yeah, the Flash. Awesome. One of my favorite action figures of Rey Mysterio. I probably grew up with like 5 different Rey Mysterios. And the Shawn Michaels with chest hair. It was crazy, dude. It actually had chest hair on it. Anything you really wanted and never got. I was very blessed with my childhood where we would ask for things and we would get them. Even things I didn't think I wanted, I got. And that's a big shout out to my upbringing, a big shout out to my parents, where very rare that we didn't ask for something or we didn't write on our Christmas list and we didn't get it. They would move heaven and earth to get what we wanted. And so that's something I never lost sight of, and how much gratitude and appreciation I have. And one day, if I have the opportunity to have kids of my own, I want to be able to do the same for them and give them anything and everything. With that being said, the one thing I never got, and it's no fault to them, it's just how it works. The WWE, this is before the network, had released in 2006 or 2005 the WrestleMania Anthology set, a huge box set that had, at that point, WrestleMania 1 all the way to WrestleMania 22. Because, again, it was in 2006. And I wanted to buy it. Saved up enough money. Went to store to buy it. Sold out. Never got it. Never got it. But with the WrestleMania anthology, wasn't meant to be, but the network came out and I basically got it in the end. That was the one thing I never really got, but again, no fault of anybody, just was sold out. Sanford 5 says Jose wanted the WrestleMania anthology. There you see. Okay, so he answered it. Yeah. I didn't even realize that in the chat. Yeah. That was probably the one thing I wanted and didn't get. Kevin says, seeing WWE 2K24 and how good the game is fire, I would also for the newest WWE game. Yeah, every year we would get the WWE games. We started playing them with the first SmackDown versus Raw. That's where we started. We didn't play Shut Your Mouth or Here Comes the Pain. Not until later. Not until years later. So we played all the SmackDown vs. Raw games, all the WWE games, all the 2K games, with the exception of like 2K20 and 22. Those are the only two that we don't have. But shout out to my brother, Sanford5, who has his own collection. He has basically every wrestling game you can imagine, with the exception of those two that I talked about, 2K20 and 2K22. He has Just Bring It, the Know Your Role, like all the SmackDown games, all the SmackDown versus Raw games, all the WWE games like WWE 11, 12, and 13, 2K with the exception of 20 and 22, like I said. So even some of the WCW games, he has quite the collection there, so shout out to him. In fact, we've talked about it. Give you guys a sneak peek. We're thinking about streaming some of those wrestling games on the channel between he and I. A good face reveal for him. For those who are new to the channel and weren't familiar with our work, earlier on the channel, he and I had a very early incarnation of a podcast called Two Beans in a Pod. That was between my brother and I. And obviously a transition to what we're doing now. So keep an eye out. We might be doing something like that in the future. If he's down for it, of course. I don't want to put him in a position where he doesn't want to. Muhammad says kids are awesome and amazing. If you don't know what you are missing. Shout out. Sanford 5. Did you know SmackDown vs. Raw 08 has Chris Benoit in the files, but not available to play? Isn't it crazy? Yo, Sanford 5, pull up to the stream. I got Sanford on the sticks. There you go. But yeah, I would love to incorporate him more so on the gaming side. He has his own Twitch channel as well, the occasional stream as well. I try to push for that whenever he is available to do his streams. So that'd be cool to have him on, and we can do our live streams when it comes to wrestling games and kind of cross promote there. So that'd be cool if he's up for it. So yeah, that might be our next project. Again, like I said, leading up to 2025, a very big year for the channel, for the J area. More exclusive content, more unique content. We're thinking about doing more reaction videos. I have a couple of in mind, maybe a couple series in mind. Obviously, we have the Friday 5 Counts, the J Area Wrestling Podcast on Mondays. Our live streams are becoming increasingly more active than we've ever had them. And it's in large part thanks to you guys. It's getting kind of late here. So we're going to go ahead and start to... Hold on. Over here speaking like it's old territories for wrestling promotions. Damn right. Come on, you know me. I'm old school. As we bring the live stream to a close, a lot to cover. Like I said, we talked about Raw, the ongoing changes on the channel, the potential of opening up memberships, the vast growth that we've had on the channel, opening up more live streams, gaming streams when it comes as well to pro wrestling. So I'm really looking forward to 2025. Very much in large part thanks to you guys. You have guys given me an opportunity. You guys have given me an outlet for expressing my fandom of pro wrestling and establishing a community with like-minded wrestling fans. Like I said, it's a channel by wrestling fans for wrestling fans. So this would not be possible without all of you guys. I want to give a huge shout out here, of course, to Sanford 5 for the blood. Appreciate you, dog. Muhammad, Kevin, always one of the diehards here as well. Martin, we saw Sylvia Luis was also here early on in the stream. Tyler, we saw him as well. Alex, big shout out to all of you guys for continuing to support, continuing to show the love for the J area. None of it is possible without you guys. I'll always try to go out of my way and show my appreciation and my gratitude towards you guys. Can't express it enough. So appreciate you guys. Big shout out again. Much love, much appreciation. Of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you for joining me on tonight's live stream. We look forward to seeing you guys again later in the week with a live stream. Don't have the chance to say so later, so I'll say it now. Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays. Hope you guys enjoy it with your loved ones and your close ones. Here's to a great 2024 and to an even better 2025. Wishing you guys many blessings, many opportunities, and again, enjoy the holidays with your loved ones. Appreciate you guys. Love you. My name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you for joining me tonight. And with that being said, stay cool, everybody.